It isn't uncommon, or rather it is very, very common for a character of seemingly very high significance in the story to be introduced or reappear, only to then disappear for hundreds of chapters until they appear again, and even then it may take hundreds of chapters more on top of that before they actually take any action. Some of the best examples are Shanks, who we have seen take action on a few occasions, like visiting Whitebeard on the Moby Dick, ending the Paramount War, defeating Kid, but these events are hundreds of chapters apart. And a more recent example is Kizaru, who was instrumental in Sabaody but hasn't done anything of significance until Egghead. But there is one character who trumps everyone else in respect to showing up once in a while, and this character specifically has garnered a reputation for his lack of action, but it looks like things are about to change because finally Monkey D. Dragon is about to make his move. And as for what we've seen him do previously, besides his standard brooding, he took to the winds to save Luffy from Smoker during Logtan, and although it's only speculation, I am also in the camp that he was the one who shot that lightning bolt to save Luffy from being executed at the hands of Buggy. You see, even Dragon understood the threat that Buggy posed even that far back in the story, although I am also fine with the idea of Luffy just getting out of there thanks to pure luck. And a few brooding sessions later, it might be a cop-out to include this because it was a flashback, but in the post-war arc we see him save Sabo and others from the burning of Grey Terminal, while fanning the flames of rebellion in them, but that wasn't in the present, so let's put an asterisk next to that one. Then is him and the rest of the Revolutionary Army moving their base of operations from Baltigo to Kamabaka because it was discovered by Burgess. But also this doesn't help much because from a surface level observation it looked like he ran away from Blackbeard. And then there's this chapter now. Technically everything that the Revolutionary Army does is thanks to him. As the leader, he is the cause of it all. But these are just the things that he's done personally. And back to that Blackbeard thing, the point I want to make here is the same larger point of discussion I want to make in defense of Dragon and everything he has done so far. Meaning why he hasn't done much up until now. Point being, although Dragon is one guy, he is the core of this entire operation, so the safety of every single person involved and the secrecy required for their plans and the efficiency that those plans are carried out all fall onto him. It's all under his watch. So him moving base and not confronting the Blackbeard pirates is the only course of action he could have taken there to ensure the protection of those three things: safety, secrecy and efficiency. For such a lofty end goal as toppling the sole authority that is tyrannically governing the entire world, it's not worth risking all of that for a single island given all the resources, manpower, lives that would have been lost, especially when an alternative is right there with Kamabaka. And it should go without saying, Dragon just simply cannot put himself into any significant position of risk or harm until the Revolutionary Army's plan has hit a certain phase or a certain event takes place, which he himself has pointed out to be when the Holy Knights make their move. So expanding on that, Dragon sitting in the comfort of his home base, wherever it may be, waiting for news and updates about any progress that has been made from his underlings is really all he could do up until now. There is no way he would have been able to do it all by himself, so he gathered capable comrades around him and an extended army on top of that to do some of the work and share that weight on his shoulders. Obviously with each of these people believing in his cause, but also without making Dragon sound like a bad person, people who are expendable where he isn't. Pretty much every single member of the Revolutionary Army is in a position where they can be replaced, and this includes the commanders of its forces in the Four Blues. The only characters I can say who really are exceptions to this are Ivankov and Sabo, but even then there is an argument to be made against Ivankov. And the best piece of evidence for this in favor of it is Ginny's kidnapping at the hands of the Celestial Dragons in the Kuma and Bonnie backstory. At the time she was the commander of the Southern Forces. A very high position, and yet when she was taken no attempt was made to rescue her, and the Revolutionary Army kept going. Continued as normal as a whole at least. Obviously everyone who was close to Ginny were affected, and more specifically Kuma was never the same after that day, although saying that, it seemed like every day in Kuma's life changed him massively. Anyway, the army functioned for 2 years without having a southern commander, which proves my point of their expendability almost. They are replaceable, and obviously Bello Betty took over that position later on after Kuma gave his permission. So to that point, the other commanders can be replaced as well. Of course, this doesn't mean they don't have important roles, it's just that those roles are not exclusive to them. And back to Ivankov, the commander of the Grand Line forces who was imprisoned for a long while and the Revolutionary Army kept moving. Dragon didn't seem at all concerned about his close friend's imprisonment. And Ivankov did escape with a new batch of followers, so maybe that was a plan to bring some new recruits, although meeting Luffy entering Marineford was probably not part of that hypothetical plan. But anyway, Ivankov's extended absence was not a major hindrance, so Sabo is the only other untouchable I can say with full certainty, which is summed up perfectly with his emergence as the Flame Emperor, where his influence amongst civilians is possibly greater than that of Dragon himself. And then there is Dragon himself. In the simplest of explanations, if anything happens to Dragon, the entire operation crumbles. There isn't a single person capable of taking his place because the entire thing is his brainchild, so only he is able to see it through to the end as its leader. So with that in mind, him sitting at home base is him essentially pulling the strings of any action anyone else takes masterminding the operation, since the moment he steps out from the shadows, he is vulnerable. And on top of that, if Dragon were to get into any kind of major battle where he is preoccupied, where would that leave the rest of the army? Then they would become vulnerable. Which is why Dragon can only make his move at the end where a big battle is part of the plan. And he is a Yonko level threat, maybe even higher, because he doesn't even care about the One Piece. His plan is to go right for the head of the snake, the world government. So that risk of him being taken out cannot be gambled upon. Looking at all of the times we have seen him move away from the base, in present story there is only really Logtown, in which he kept himself hidden for the most part until saving Luffy, and it is the East Blue, the weakest of the 4 blues, so it was probably the best, most optimal location for Dragon being out in the open. And apart from that, we've only really seen him away from headquarters in flashbacks, and the reason why he could do it then is the same for each of those times, the same for visiting Ohara and for when he saved the Sorbet Kingdom. It's because the Revolutionary Army either wasn't a thing yet, or wasn't big enough yet for him to need to step away from the action to protect himself, his ideals, and take control of the bigger picture. The biggest risk we've seen him take is probably during the burning of Grey Terminal, but there was only one ship and he was moving amongst huge flames, so there's no reason that anyone would have suspected his presence there. So all of this is to clarify how important Dragon is and why he hasn't done much yet, and all of this is without touching on the topic of his power. How strong is Monkey D. Dragon, if he is powerful at all? Because there's still the possibility that he is solely influential and powerful thanks to his cunning and intellect, although honestly I don't think so. One of the reasons for that train of thought is that after so long, after over 1000 chapters since his introduction, will his character's power live up to the hype? And will it live up to the standards set by his own family? His father, the greatest and strongest marine to have ever lived, and one of the strongest characters to have ever lived, period. And his son, an emperor of the sea with the most ridiculous power in the world, who will become the king of the pirates, and I think by the end of the story the strongest character ever in One Piece. So Dragon can't be weak, as much as him relying on smarts would make sense, but his family tree would say otherwise, and him just having this sort of middling level of strength, not weak but also not amongst the top tiers, would just be kind of underwhelming. I believe he has some kind of Storm Devil fruit with the lightning saving Luffy and the huge gusts of wind whenever he appears. In this shot of him holding Smoker's weapon, it looks like it is going through his hand, so maybe it's a Stormologia fruit, although it might just be an animation error. But I wouldn't be opposed to a Mythical Zone. I am a huge fan of Mythical Zone Devil fruits. I know some people kind of got burnt out of them after Wano, I didn't. And as for Haki, he has to have all 3. Luffy and Garp have all 3, plus Dragon's goal is as big as they come. So Conqueror's Haki makes perfect sense. So we have a recipe for a top tier character in terms of strength and influence. So all that's left for him is to back up that portrayal with some very good feats. As for what he's going to do, he is waiting for the Holy Knights to take action because they are a huge factor in how all of this goes down. And yet, in this very same chapter, we see the former Supreme Commander of the Holy Knights get promoted to the status of one of the 5 Elder Planets, after Imu gave Saturn a taste of his own medicine. So Dragon is aware of the existence of the Holy Knights. He knows about the existence of Saint Garling, so I wonder how long it will take before he finds out about Garling's promotion to the position of Elder, and to that point Garling knows about the existence of Imu as an Elder now, but did he know when he was still a part of the Holy Knights? How many other Celestial Dragons know about Imu's existence, I wonder, if any? And with the promotion, a new figure must step up as the next commander of that group, which is probably going to be that guy in the silhouette. So do they know about Imu's existence, or does every member of the Holy Knights know about it? And how will that work? Like, does Imu use their telepathy to communicate that, by the way, I'm also here, and if you babble about it, I will kill you like I killed Saturn? And another interesting idea that isn't mine suggests that Venus Juro is the only member of the original 5 elders, since he is the only one that's wearing his own traditional clothing, while each of the other members wear suits, and that's the same for Garling, who also changed his wardrobe after he joined. Anyway, Dragon also just found out about the existence of Imu himself thanks to Sabo, so does that throw any kind of wrench into his plans? There's still a lot of variables yet to be revealed. But I can see a confrontation between them, because on the flip side, I am very confident that Imu has been keeping a close eye on Dragon. So all in all, it does look like the events of Egghead Island are gonna force Dragon to speed things up a bit because of how the world will react to it and Vegapunk's message specifically. And we can already see how serious things are becoming, because Dragon isn't sitting down anymore and he actually said something at the shores of the island, so that's how you know this man means business. But in all seriousness, I get that him not doing anything can really get frustrating considering what is expected of him, but when you think about it, it does make sense why he isn't, and I have high hopes that once he does do something, take action, make a move, it is going to be crazy, like Shanks one-shotting Kid or Garp destroying a town when the chapter drops where Dragon finally shows what he is capable of. It will be insane.